The Gladius didn't become one of history's deadliest swords because it was flashy or oversized. It became deadly because it was perfectly suited to the realities of Roman warfare. While other armies prized long, sweeping blades for duels and dramatic swings, Rome needed something different. A compact, reliable weapon that could be used in the chaos of close-quarters combat. Roman soldiers fought in tight formations, shoulder to shoulder, shield against shield, where there was little room to swing a long sword. The Gladius was short enough to maneuver easily, yet sharp and strong enough to deliver lethal thrusts, making each soldier a precise instrument of war. Its design, combined with Roman discipline, drills, and coordinated tactics, turned an ordinary man into a deadly part of a lethal system. In essence, the Gladius wasn't just a sword. It was the embodiment of Rome's efficient, methodical approach to conquest. The Gladius was the standard short sword of the Roman infantry, designed specifically for the rigors of legionary combat. Measuring typically between 50 to 60 centimeters in length, it was compact enough for soldiers to wield in tight formations, yet long and sturdy enough to pierce through armor and deliver fatal thrusts. Double-edged and balanced for both stabbing and cutting, the Gladius became a reliable weapon for thousands of soldiers across the Roman Empire. It wasn't reserved for elite warriors. Every legionary carried one, making it the defining tool of Rome's infantry and a central element in the empire's military dominance. The Gladius, as iconic as it became, was not originally a Roman invention. Its roots trace back to the Iberian Peninsula, where Celtiberian tribes wielded short, stabbing swords that excelled in close-quarter combat. Roman soldiers first encountered these blades during campaigns in Hispania in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE, and they quickly recognized their potential. Rather than simply copying them, the Romans adapted the design, improving the balance, standardizing the length, and refining the tip for maximum thrusting efficiency. This adoption was more than just borrowing a weapon. It reflected Rome's pragmatic military philosophy: use whatever works. By integrating the Gladius into their legionary system, the Romans created a sword perfectly suited to their disciplined formations, allowing soldiers to stab efficiently in tight ranks, overwhelm enemies in confined spaces, and coordinate attacks as a lethal collective rather than as isolated fighters. What made the Gladius truly lethal was the careful attention to its design, which prioritized function over flair. Its blade was relatively short, around 50 to 60 centimeters, broad enough to cut effectively, but narrow enough to maintain control in the chaos of battle. The balance of the sword allowed soldiers to wield it with precision, ensuring that each thrust or cut could be delivered quickly without overextending or losing stability. The tip of the Gladius was its most dangerous feature: pointed, strong, and perfect for stabbing between armor plates, through gaps in shields, or into unprotected flesh. Being double-edged, it could also slice if needed, making it versatile for different combat scenarios. Combined with its compact size, the Gladius was ideal for close-quarter fighting, where space was limited, and speed and accuracy often decided life or death. Every element of its design was tuned for efficiency and lethality. The Gladius was designed primarily for thrusting rather than swinging, and that was a deliberate choice that made it extraordinarily effective. A thrust concentrates all the force on a single point, allowing the soldier to pierce armor, chainmail, or the gaps between an opponent's shield and body. Slashing, by contrast, spreads the force over a larger area, making it less likely to cause a fatal wound in the chaos of a battlefield. Thrusting also allowed for faster recovery between strikes. A soldier could stab, retract, and be ready for the next enemy almost instantly, maintaining continuous pressure without exposing himself. In the tight formations of the Roman legion, where every second and every movement counted, the Gladius's stabbing design maximized lethality while minimizing wasted motion. The Gladius reached its full potential when paired with the Roman scutum, the large rectangular shield that was a hallmark of the legionary. The scutum provided extensive protection, covering most of the body and allowing soldiers to advance into enemy lines with relative safety. Behind this shield wall, a legionary could thrust the Gladius through the narrow gaps that opened between opposing shields, striking with deadly precision while remaining largely protected. This combination created a terrifying psychological effect. Enemies faced not just a soldier, but a disciplined wall of steel that could stab relentlessly without exposing itself. The scutum and gladius together transformed close-quarters combat into a methodical and almost mechanical execution of deadly efficiency. Roman battlefield dominance wasn't just about individual skill, it was about collective efficiency. Legionaries fought in tight formations, shoulder to shoulder, where every soldier's movement was synchronized with his comrades'. In these crowded conditions, long swords became more of a liability than an advantage. Swinging a heavy blade could hit a friend or leave gaps in the line. The gladius, compact and easily maneuverable, allowed each soldier to stab effectively without disrupting the formation. This combination of weapon and discipline coordination turned the legion into a single, lethal organism, where the strength of the group multiplied the effectiveness of the individual. In other words, the gladius worked because the army itself worked. The deadly efficiency of the gladius was amplified by Rome's rigorous training and discipline. Legionaries didn't rely solely on natural skill or luck. They drilled daily with shields, wooden swords, and practice dummies to master precise thrusts, positioning, and timing. Repetition made stabbing almost automatic, so in the chaos of battle, a soldier could deliver lethal strikes without thinking, even under extreme stress. This disciplined approach ensured that ordinary men could wield the gladius effectively, turning a standard-issue weapon into a force multiplier. By combining repetition, physical conditioning, and mental focus, Roman commanders created soldiers whose skill with the gladius was as much a product of training as of the sword itself. Over the centuries, the gladius evolved to meet the changing demands of Roman warfare, giving rise to distinct variants. The earliest, known as the Hispaniensis type, was slightly longer with a pronounced taper, reflecting its Iberian origins. Later, the Mainz type featured a wasp-waisted blade that improved control and balance, while the Pompeii type became straighter and more standardized for mass production. Each variant was a response to battlefield experience. Adjustments in length, shape, and tip geometry allowed soldiers to fight effectively in both tight formations and open skirmishes, showing that Rome continuously refined its weapons to maximize combat efficiency. On the battlefield, the gladius proved its deadly reputation time and again. Roman soldiers used it not for flashy duels, but for systematic killing in tight, chaotic conditions where space was limited and every second mattered. During campaigns across Gaul, Hispania, and beyond, legionaries would advance behind their shield walls, thrusting their gladi into exposed gaps with precision and speed. In confined spaces, city streets, forested valleys, or narrow passes, the short sword allowed them to strike repeatedly without overextending, turning skirmishes into efficient, lethal engagements. Enemy forces quickly learned to fear the disciplined Roman line. Even the bravest warriors were unnerved by the relentless, mechanical nature of the gladius in action. Its combination of speed, accuracy, and adaptability made close-quarters combat not just survivable for the Romans, but devastatingly effective against any opponent caught in their formations. One of the often overlooked reasons the gladius became so effective was Rome's ability to manufacture and standardize it on a massive scale. Legionaries across the empire were issued swords that were virtually identical, ensuring that every soldier could rely on a familiar, dependable weapon no matter where they were deployed. This uniformity simplified training, allowed for easier repairs and replacements, and meant that entire armies could fight with the same lethal efficiency. By turning the gladius into a standardized tool of war, Rome multiplied its effectiveness, creating legions where each soldier's weapon complemented the collective strength of the unit. As Roman warfare evolved, the gladius slowly began to lose its dominance, not because it was ineffective, but because the battlefield itself was changing. The empire increasingly faced enemies who relied more on cavalry and faster, more mobile tactics, where reach mattered more than tight infantry stabbing. In these conditions, a longer sword became more practical, especially for mounted soldiers, leading to the growing popularity of the spatha. Over time, the spatha replaced the gladius in many units, marking a shift away from the classic legionary style of close-packed infantry combat that had once made the gladius so terrifyingly effective. Even after the Gladius began fading from the battlefield, its legacy stayed alive because it represented something bigger than just a weapon. It became the symbol of Rome's military mindset: short, direct, disciplined, and brutally efficient. Later swords across Europe, including longer Roman-era blades like the spatha, still carried design principles that the Gladius helped popularize: strong points, practical balance, and a focus on battlefield effectiveness rather than decoration. Over time, the Gladius also became immortal in culture, appearing in art, literature, and modern films as the signature weapon of the Roman legionary, reminding the world that Rome didn't build an empire with heroic duels, but with organized, repeatable destruction. And that's exactly why the Gladius is still remembered today, because it wasn't just a sword, it was an empire's tool of conquest. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, this has been History of Questions, where we uncover how the deadliest ideas in history shape the world.